Well, hello everyone. It's JacksRBetter. Let's talk some gear. Okay, so here's my tarp when it's down. Again, I use a continuous ridge line. I just find it's easier. I can slide it back and forth as I need to. There's two ways to run it. You can either run the ridge line underneath the tarp or above. I think underneath gives a little bit more structure because it's supporting the entire ridge line of the tarp. But I generally run it over the top just because if it's going to rain, I figure if the water's running down the line, if it's above, then it won't run down into the tarp. It really hasn't been all that big a deal, frankly. It hasn't rained on me all that much either, though, so I'm going to continue to work that process. It's a little less convenient, I think, having it on the top, but it still seems to work fine. What I did as far as the hooking my tarp to the ridge line, a lot of systems come with a prusik knot that, here I'll say. So a lot of systems come with a prusik knot attached to a loop, and that loop will either have an S-beaner or a nacrobiner, some kind of a way to open and close onto the tarp loop. You know, my philosophy is just like it is with the hammock. I don't want to be monkeying around with any of this when I'm out on the trail. I want it all set up, so all I have to do is pull this open and unfurl it, and it's done. I don't want to have to hook my tarp to the ridge line. I don't want to have to do any of that. And so to save weight, I mean, I just took this loop that's off of the prusik knot and just tied it to the tarp, and that saves me the weight of the connection. So it seems to work well for me. But again, I have a continuous ridge line for both of my tarps. I use the OP one on my heavier Superfly, and I use the lighter one on my lightweight ZPacks Fly, and they've worked great. And I have the flexibility of the prusik knot, and so that's that system. The other nice, well, not the other nice, another nice part of my ZPacks tarp is, one, it's custom built exactly the way I want. I mean, imagine going to a store nowadays and deciding, hey, this is pretty nice, but I'd really like it. Wouldn't it be great if they made it this way? How many times have we said that in a gear store? You walk into a gear store, like, man, if this would have this feature, it would be perfect. But it never has that feature because no two people can agree on what the greatest feature is. And when they add cost and benefit and all that kind of business, you know, into it, then, you know, you end up with what you get. Usually a piece that's too heavy, maybe has too many features rather than too few. What I wanted, like I said, was a tarp that was going to be big, was going to weigh very little, and I wanted doors built in. And so what Joe did for me is he added 3 tie-outs to each side, plus the ends. So I have 5 tie-outs on each side of the tarp. And what I've used is the 1 1/4 Z-Pack line, the yellow, and I've tied off on each of the inner corners, if you will. There's the three loops. I tie it off to the 2 outer loops. I leave the center one open. I generally don't use the center one, but I can use it in certain porch modes, or if I really needed to, I could just tie off another line to it and use another stake if I needed to. Generally, I use the outer ones, and it's worked great. On the doors, the ends of the doors, I use a piece of 1/16 inch shot cord, which weighs nothing. And because it's not really structurally holding the doors, you know, the tarp open, I can make it nice and light like this, and it seems to work fine. I haven't had it in any gales. If that seems to be not enough, then I'll add some more later, but you hate to add weight when you have something this light. Okay, so you might be thinking, so why a continuous ridgeline? Well, one, I gained some flexibility that I don't have as conveniently with two end lines. And the second is, with these Dutch connections, then I have to connect the tarp to the trees anyhow. These Dutch connections are so light, and this line is so light that there's almost no penalty to using a continuous ridge line, and it's a lot more convenient. I mean, one of the things you got to deal with is placing your tarp properly over your hammock, because obviously, like I said, I use whoopee slings on the hammock, and the whoopee slings do a great job. If it rains, the water will run down the whoopee sling until it hits this knot, and then it tends to fall off. If it's going to rain, then I may go ahead and put some kind of a slippery loop in there, just to make sure that the water has a place to hit and run off. So obviously, if you're using those parts of the whoopee sling to run the water down, you want to make sure that your tarp is over top of those. In this case, the ZPacks tarp is so wonderful, and I'll go ahead and post the dimensions online so that you have the dimensions. I don't know them off the top of my head. I just know it's huge. For the little bit of weight that it is, it's huge, and I love it. I mean, you can see that I'm not close to center on this hammock, and I'm still close to being good enough as far as that goes. I mean, I have probably 4 or 5 inches beyond the head end of my hammock, but on the foot end, I probably have 2.5 feet. So let's go ahead and use the structural ridge line and even that up some. Okay, that's closer to centered, and you can see how easy it was to move it. It takes almost no time at all. As far as tie-outs, Joe also puts a tie-out in the middle of the tarp at the top and puts a little mitten clip on it. And so what I do with that is just clip it on the top of the ridge line, and that just helps give me a little additional support for almost no weight. So see, I also had him include tie-outs like I have in my Superfly. They're really wonderful when you're pulling the sides of your tarp in storm mode. If you got a real gale coming in or whatever, you can pull that down nice and taut, and then with the side pull-outs, it'll give you more room inside the tarp between you and the hammock. So that really works out well. And again, I attached some G-line to that. Actually, you'll see it's individual pieces, and then the individual pieces I just hooked to one piece of 3/32 shot cord. Actually, this one might be, I think this is still 3/32. If you needed heavier, you could go to 1/4. So far this has held up fine. And then I'll hook this off of one thing. That way I only have to use one stake. See, when it's tightened out, I only have to use one stake. So that's why I go with that system. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rig this up